here. All right, so from here on out, we're gonna be going through the forest on my phone here. And thank you again, everybody that decided to come out. Of course, we're going through some trying times, but we wanted to be able to bring the forest to all of you. You know, it's really unfortunate. Luckily, I'm able to come out here and walk around, get my exercise in, but can share a little bit of information while I do that. We are the Waikoloa Dry Forest Initiative, and we're a nonprofit that is aiming to restore an area of tropical dry forest in Waikoloa, Hawaii Island, in Hawaii. And of course, everybody came to see some awesome plants and beautiful scenery, so I'm going to switch this camera around and show you this tree here. Alright, so this is Hi'ialo, the Wheelie tree. Oh, I'm getting bad messages. Alright, so thank you everybody for coming. Again, comment where you're watching from, because I'd like to know. We're doing the best we can with this overcast light, but this is a Willy tree. This is one of the trees that we're here to protect. And we're constantly gathering seeds, growing them in our nursery, and planting them back out here. But this entire area, if you've ever been to Waikoloa before, you might know, but this entire area is completely inundated with this non-native grass. And if you've ever been to the dry sides of Hawaii, pretty much all over the state, you'll be familiar with seeing a whole lot of grass. I'm going to try to peek through the fence here. A whole lot of grass. And these Kiave trees, these are the few trees that you're seeing kind of dotted out here on the landscape. But this entire area that you're seeing, it's all over the west sides of the Big Island, is nothing but grass and Kiave trees. But this whole area would have been a fully canopied forest with tall trees touching branches, such as this tree here, Hi'ialo, the Willy tree, Erythrhinus sanwicensis. And we're going to be going on a little tour of the preserve today and kind of checking out a few different plants, kind of talking about what we're all about out here. But if you can see the plant and hear me well, give me a thumbs up so that I know that things are going well. Otherwise, I'm going to have to make some adjustments. Looks like we have a few people from Waikoloa, the mainland. We got some future foresters in here. Awesome. Those people are great. You'll have to check out my shirt here. The Waikoloa Future Foresters. So this is a part of our after school program. These students come out 3 days out of the week and get to come learn and explore and just check out the forest out here, do environmental education. So they're a big part of who we are. Again, we're Waikoloa Dry Forest Initiative, a forest restoration project trying to restore a 275 acre preserve. I mentioned that the entire area used to look like what you normally think of when you drive through Waikoloa, nothing but grass, but this area was a full forest at one time. So there's been a huge change across the landscape over the last 200 years or so. And you see our fence, I kind of poked the camera through there just a few minutes ago. That fence is not there to keep people out, but it's to keep out grazing animals. Hawaii historically did not have grazing animals, and those arrived about 200 years ago or so, and they love to eat native vegetation. So they come through, they eat all of the plants within their reach, and specifically native plants do not have the defense mechanisms kind of built up that deter that kind of herbivory. So they're very vulnerable to these grazing animals, and the trees themselves, like this Willy tree here, have no problem making flowers, making seeds, and those seeds fall down to the forest floor. But once they sprout, they're eaten by these grazing animals, sheep, goats, pigs and cows. And I see a question here, what kind of grass? This is called fountain grass, or Sancris cetaceus. It's a big problem even in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and I think it's even Colorado. It's a big invasive grass that's kind of causing problems all over, but it's planted as an ornamental in many cases because it doesn't need much water, and it does quite well. But as you can see, it just tends to take over all of these different things, and so the grazing animals are eating all of the vegetation within their reach. This grass is outcompeting our native plants for water and nutrients. And then part of this grass's life cycle is to burn and grow back healthier after a fire. Our native forests weren't used to that frequency of wildfire, but now that we have these ever-increasing wildfires in this area, our native forests are burning up and grass is replacing it and coming back in healthier. So we're going to start to walk down the trail here, and this is another tree. I hope you guys can see it. The overcast lighting is a little bit causing some trouble for me, but this is Hele, another Willy tree, and this is another reason why our project got started. Historically, about 10 to 15 years ago, here and actually digging up some of these trees at this size and moving them around and selling them for ornamental purposes, and some of our founding members kind of helped put a stop to that, started documenting the trees, starting to protect them, and that snowballed into who we are today to try and restore some of this area. So if you can take a look as I pan across, what you're seeing out here in this area is one of our most successful planting areas. This was all grass before, and we started to remove that grass, and pretty much everything you're seeing now is a native, cleared in 2013 or so, and we began planting, and now, you know, everything is native dominant, and there's very little grass, and there's quite a few native plant species. So today we're going to walk through and try and check some of these things out. All right, check out some of the tree leaves. Of course, we're going to do that. I'm going to walk down here. We're going to check out some different plants, and of course, we'll stop by some Willy as we go through. You'll have to excuse me. It's my first time going live on Facebook for any reason, especially to the public. So thank you all for coming in and checking us out today. You know, everyone is locked inside their houses for good reason, trying to keep everyone safe. But we wanted to be able to share our forest with you as much as we possibly can. We usually do a tour every first Friday, and unfortunately we've been having to cancel all of our groups just like all of you, and this is one way that we can bring some joy into everyone's life and be able to share some of what we have going on out here. So unfortunately the preserve is closed right now. We had a tough decision to make, but for everyone's safety, we decided to close everything down and cancel all of our groups. But we're still doing what we can, and here we have arrived at our first little plant here. Let me turn this around. And we have some native morning glory here. This is called Koa. Beautiful morning glory flowers. You can see a tiny little bud starting to open up over here. These, of course, are fully open. And this is a great plant for Waikoloa. If you're familiar with this area, you know how dry and devoid of plant life it typically looks in these modern times. But Koa does very well out here and can actually start to change some of these areas back into this lush and verdant landscape. Everything that you're seeing here is, for the most part, a native plant. And we use Koa as kind of strategically to cover up some of the spaces and start to fill in the ground space. There's a lot of rocks out here, and can start to shade out the ground and block some of that grass from coming back in. So it's a very vigorous and healthy plant. Again, we'll take a quick look at the flowers here. Whoo, that's beautiful. Yeah, this one is not invasive. It's an indigenous plant. This is Koa, a native morning glory to Hawaii. There are many different species throughout the state, and some of them are invasive. We're hearing a lot of silverbills. I think I saw some saffron finches out here, and there's some game birds, Urkel's francolins, that might be going off in the background. All right, here's a fun little plant. So this one is in the hibiscus family. This is a hibiscus relative called Ilima, and it is a 5-petaled flower, very typical of the Malvaceae family, which is the hibiscus family. And this one is going off with flowers right now. This is really cool. What the fun thing about Ilima out here is this entire area, everything that you're seeing through the camera was nothing but grass about 6 or 7 years ago. And as we cleared out the grass, all of this Ilima started to come in and fill in the area on its own. So the seeds are still around, and they're just waiting for the opportunity to sprout and grow up and become this nice dense patch of Ilima here. So the grass has kind of covered everything up, but the seeds down in the soil, again, like I said, they're just waiting for the opportunity. So once we removed that grass, that available light coming down to the ground was one of the triggers for these things to just sprout up and start to fill in some of this area. Here we have a young Willy here. We're gonna get close up to this guy. You'll see some discoloration on the leaves, but the new leaves are kind of quite green and looking lush. That's pretty normal. I think we can find a better walk, but what I should have mentioned is that Willy here, I noticed the discoloration on the leaves, but this is Hawaii's deciduous tree, and it loses its leaf. Deciduous means that it loses its leaves for part of the year. In the mainland, that happens in the winter. But here in Hawaii, we have a few deciduous trees that lose their leaves in the heat of summer. So during the summer, everything dries out, and that's when they put on all of these leaves. But when it dries out in the summer, these trees will drop all of their leaves, and they have a whole bunch of water stored in their trunk. And they live off of that water through the dry times. So they look like these barren skeletons out here with the bright orange bark. I'm not sure if you know, when they're young, they're still green on the stem. But they'll these really beautiful, really nice orange architecture. And then when the rains come back, they'll leaf out again. Oh, if you live in Waikoloa Village, you remember a Willy tree that was planted by the shopping center. I should have mentioned, I'm a little off track, but Hele here, the tree that we just looked at off in the distance over there, there was an area that was going to be developed, and we tried some of those same techniques of moving the trees at large size and saved them from being kind of bulldozed down, and we moved them around to different areas in Waikoloa. They don't really like that, so they go into this deep shock. This tree that we're seeing off in the distance there went into a shock for about 10 years. It never flowered or fruited, but it recently flowered for the first time a couple years ago, so this one's pretty stable. But that one by the shopping center was also moved there, and they store so much energy in their trunks waiting for those dry seasons that it can take a really long time for the trees to actually die off. So it was kind of living off of stored energy, and maybe was trying to put down some new roots, but ultimately it couldn't make it, and that's why it was kind of a slow deterioration for that one. Oh, here's something. You notice the discoloration on the leaves. Here's something that happens pretty normal dry Willy trees are, but these are lace bugs. These little guys, these little nasty little guys crawling around on the underside of the leaf. They're feeding on the plant juices and kind of sucking out nutrients that's why these leaves are becoming discolored. But overall, it doesn't seem to be negatively impacting the trees too much. It's not much that we really do about it. And again, the trees will shed their leaves and these guys will disappear for some time. And then they sprout new leaves, like this little leaf bud coming out right there. And then it just kind of is an ongoing cycle. Start to dry out, you notice that the lace bugs are starting to appear. There's quite a few different pests that have affect these Willy trees, and one of the reasons why there's not as many as there used to be, again, they were covering this entire area all over the west side of Big Island. But there's an invasive gall wasp, a tiny little wasp. It's about the size of a gnat that lays its eggs, and we're going to try to find some evidence of that gall wasp. Here we go. Here's a little bit. These are the galls. So the tiny wasps lay their eggs into the new tissues of the plant, the leaves, the new stems, flowers, and then those little wasp larvae kind of feed on the plant material, and then they hatch out. So you can see this one's kind of old. There's some old hatch marks there. That's where the tiny wasp exited and went around to create new galls and more wasp on all these Willy trees. But that thing arrived to Hawaii in 2005, and it actually killed about half of the Willy trees that we have around the preserve within 3 years. So it was incredibly devastating. But the Department of Ag, the Hawaii Department of Ag, went and found this thing's natural predator in Tanzania, researched it very well, and made sure that this predatory wasp was only going to attack the bad wasp, and found out that it was going to be very successful. So they studied it, they released it, and now this predatory wasp is attacking the bad wasp that we just saw back there, and it stabilized the health of the trees. So although we lost about half the trees in the mid-2000s, the tree's health is overall stabilized right now. Okay, sorry, I'm walking around a little bit. I hope that you guys are working on your lockdown bodies like I have, having some snacks and such while you're sitting at home. I've been working on my lockdown body for 7 months. I just had a baby, and I've had quite the sedentary lifestyle for the last few months. But I digress. Here's some more plants. Our state flower. Again, this is a member of the hibiscus family. This is Ma'ohauhele, or Hibiscus brackenridgei, and this thing is really cool. It started flowering a couple months ago, but the interesting thing about this hibiscus is that the flowers only last for a single day. The yellow spots that you're seeing, these are the flower buds that are just starting to open up, and they'll be open right at the midday sun. So when it's not overcast, it's usually really hot out here, sometimes very windy, but this plant's strategy is to be open and have your flowers trying to attract pollinators right in the heat of the midday sun when other things are trying to take shelter because it's so hot outside. This one has a little bit of a different strategy, and so right around noon or so Hawaii time, these things will be fully open. Maybe by the end of this we'll try to check out another one, see how much more they've opened, and they'll be withering away by this afternoon. Okay, yes, thank you, Tyler. Yeah, we are in Waikoloa on the Big Island of Hawaii. We manage a 275-acre forest preserve in which we are trying to restore and protect some of our native plant species that are still persisting out here. We showed one a few minutes ago, Wheelie, and we also have another tree out here called Uhi, which we're going to check out here in a few minutes. But again, this entire area used to be full of native plants with a full forest here, overstory, understory. You know, I understand that Waikoloa was known for having quite a few birds. But I'm going to continue my journey here and show show us the next plant here. I'm sorry I'm not able to see all of the comments, but thanks to whoever else is watching and answering some of these questions. Like I said, keep asking your questions, and we're definitely going to go through afterwards and comment and try to write back to everyone to see what their questions are. This is the plant that I just mentioned. This is an uhi uhi. And I'm going to try to get a closer look. This is one that we've planted, so let me step back here, show you how large it is. It's about maybe 10, maybe a little taller. But this thing was planted in 2013, I believe, and it's quite healthy. So you take a look at the leaves. This is a member of the pea family, of the legumes. And we're going to try to sneak around the, because I think I see some flowers popping out over there. You take a look at the leaves, there's a lot of lookalikes. So people are familiar with monkey pod trees. They have a similar look to their leaf. But a lot of plants in the legume family will have a similar looking compound leaf there. But check this out. Okay, here we go. Yes, and this one is federally listed. So this uhi uhi. Oh, look, there's a pollinator trying to come in. Let's see if we can capture this. This is federally listed as endangered. There are less than 50 of these trees left in the wild, mature adults. And we care for 8 of those remaining last few individuals. Most of them are here on Big Island of Hawaii, but there's a handful that are scattered throughout the state. But for the most part, they're here in Hawaii. So take a look at these flowers here. The future foresters are going to be learning about flowers here pretty soon. We're trying to do some distance learning that Jackie's taken a hold of, but you can see these flowers, and you can see the little anthers sticking up top, those little purple guys. And that's where the pollen is held. And if we look really closely, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show it to you guys. Let me try to see if we can come over here. Oh yeah, here's a good one. Let's get this in focus here. Bear with me. Come on, little buddy. The bees are all over this thing. It's been a great pollination year. Okay, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see that, but there's a tiny little white guy sticking up there. That's part of the pistil, and on the top of that is the stigma, where the pollen is deposited, and then it travels down inside the flower to where the seeds are going to start to develop. And you can see right here, down here, this is a flower that's been pollinated a while ago. Oh, this is not great. Sorry for the focusing, guys. But this seed pod is starting to develop after the flower's been pollinated. And these seeds are really large. I mentioned it's in the bean family, but let's try to just get a nice picture in there. But the seeds are actually very large. They're almost like a lima bean in shape. And that bean was, like I said, very large, and there weren't very many large animals in Hawaii over the years that could transport a seed of that size. So this plant's strategy is to create these large flat bean pods that you can kind of see hanging off the tree here. And they're designed to fly in the wind, so they'll kind of, in these high wind events, they'll kind of fly off the tree, and then those seeds will go down into the soil. And now that we have the protected space of the preserve, these seeds have no problem sprouting up and creating little tiny uhi uhi trees. And they're free from getting eaten by these grazing animals, so we have naturally reproducing uhi uhi around the preserve. But for those of you that are not too familiar with Waikoloa, this is our substrate. So this is an A'a lava flow. At one time was hot magma. And it's really jagged. You don't see much surface soil. This one came from Mauna Kea between 15 and 35,000 years ago. But it can be a very challenging place to try and plant a tree. So take a look at this. These are some extreme planting conditions, but all of our native plants are well suited for this type of habitat. and it has everything that these plants need to survive. So once you get below the surface of the rock here, there's right around 8 to 10 inches underneath the rock. You can often find some pockets of soil, and that's where we plant. And all of these plants are coming from tropical dry forests, which a tropical dry forest is an area that, of course, is dry. We receive, the categorization is 9 to 50 inches of rain per year. We're right on the bottom edge of that. We get 9 to 12 inches of rain per year. Here's a seed pod here. Just checking that out. Look how cool it is. And I'm not sure if you can see, there's some indentations. That's where the seeds are beginning to develop. There are flowers, there are bees flying all over this thing. Here's a nice grouping of pods. All right. So let's continue on down, I suppose. Check out some more uhi uhi before. This one has been planted, and it's about 12 feet tall already. Our organization became an official nonprofit in 2011, 2012, so we really haven't been doing this type of forestry work for too long, and yet I'm ever amazed with the results that we're seeing out here, especially given the crazy terrain, how hard it is to plant out here. And of everything that we plant, we have about a 75% survivorship of things that we plant. And all of our planting is done with volunteers, like people watching that have come out. So it's kind of a really cool opportunity to get to work with the community and, you know, get to see this forest grow again. It's incredible. All right, I'm gonna flip you around. Look, check this out. This is a'ali'i. This is one of our more successful dry forest plants. It's a shrub in the soapberry family, and we call it one of our community builders because after we plant it, it grows to this size after only a few years, and it produces thousands of seeds after the first couple years, and it creates a whole lot of leaf litter. So if we get under here, it's starting to bring back some of the soil that was once in this area, but you can take a look at all this leaf litter, and just like what was bare rock, starting to see all this nice soil develop. Look at that! It's incredible! I'm actually really excited about this Facebook Live because on a normal tour I can't just be crawling around in the bushes like this. But oftentimes you see these in lay, and most people think that these structures here are the flowers. These are actually the fruit, and by fruit what I'm talking about is anything with a seed inside, so the future foresters know what I'm talking about. But these are these dry papery fruits with these wings on them, and those wings again are special adaptations to help this fly around in the wind. Okay, if there were some dry ones I'd pick them and show you how they fly, but looks like most of them are still developing. You don't want to pick the seeds when they're still green or red because the seeds haven't matured yet inside, so even if you pick those, the seeds aren't going to be viable and they're not going to grow into baby plants. So we're going to leave them on there for now. But here we go. We got a couple here. And whoa, you couldn't see that, but that's okay. We're walking across the road here, and this is where we've been planting this year. This has been the most successful planting area that I've ever been a part of, and it's for a few reasons. Let's get up close and personal with a few things. I don't want to go down in this pit too much because then I'll lose the reception, but I'll talk about it from the side here. Here's a nice little ko'oko'olau. But this area that we're looking at, we looked at it in the beginning. Sorry, I keep trying to turn my phone. But this is our hi'ialo outplanting area. And And everything that you're seeing, other than the few Kiave trees, these non-native mesquite trees out here, is a native plant that you're looking at. Some of these were planted, some of these just came up in on their own. But this is the first year that we've been able to go to an older planting area. I mentioned that this one was originally cleared and planted in 2013. And then this is the first time we've come back to replant, try to fill in some of the gaps, and get a better diversity of plants throughout this area. There's a Ma'ohauhele, you can see the yellow flowers out there. Little Ilima here. And we've had such a good rain year that we're looking at over 90% survivorship. A short bio from Rob. All right. I'm Rob Yagi. I'm the preserve manager here at Waikoloa Dry Forest. And I've been working out here for about 3 years now, working with Jen and Jackie. And I take care of the plants and do a lot of the field work out here, and get to work with cool people like you. So I'm out here kind of taking care of the nursery, helping different groups plant trees, doing a lot of the weed maintenance and irrigation, and just kind of figuring out how we restore this place. For many years it was Jen Lawson all by herself doing all of this, and figuring out where we go as this big visionary. So really a lot of credit goes to her and then the founding members who came before her. But this is a huge endeavor. 275 acres. We have a staff of 3 people, so we really rely on the community to help us out, which has been amazing to be a part of. Everyone comes out, helps planting, helps pull weeds. Different school groups come and they really get their hands dirty and really bringing back this place. And what we're seeing is incredible. Just with a little bit of help from humans like us, we're able to restore some of these areas into these this area that we're looking out here. This is like a native dominant shrubland right now. We're waiting for the trees to fill back in. It's only been about 7 years. So we have a whole bunch of Willy trees waiting to come back, and all different kinds of species out here. So when we first began our work out here, we knew of about 7 or 8 native plant species to still be persisting in this area. And we thought that was great. That was like a pretty intact dry forest. These ecosystems are highly endangered now. You don't really see them very much. But now, through our planting, through things that we've rediscovered, I guess, or that we just noticed as they came back in, we have over 60 plant species. Of course, my background is in biology. I've been doing this type of natural resource work for about 10 years now, and prior to that, yes, I went to Hilo, so shout out to anyone at Hilo out there. That's awesome. And Jen and I have worked together at different jobs for a number of years, but working pretty solidly together for the last 3 years here at Waikoloa Dry Forest Initiative, and I'm loving every minute of it. I can't get enough of this place. It's absolutely incredible what's going on out here. Well, I actually began my academic career at Hilo looking for something more in the medical field. My degree's in cell biology. I didn't want to be a doctor, but something in the medical field, maybe doing some research. But towards the end of my school career, I found my love for native plants, and I got a job just doing invasive species removal. So it was a whole lot of weed whacking and just pulling weeds. And I started to learn more and more about Hawaii's native plants. And, somehow, some kind of way, I've been blessed with a lot of knowledge about some of these very rare and endangered species. So now I'm out here just trying to do the best as I can to take care of these awesome plant species, and trying to learn more every day. There's still a lot more to learn. Of course, you all know that. And yeah, just trying to make the best of it, having fun and learning things. And through doing this type of field work, things are kind of revealing themselves as time goes on. So there's always something more to learn. The crews, when they come out to volunteer, go to our website, waikoloadryforest.org, and you can see our volunteer schedule. We usually try to have planting days or some sort of volunteer activity the second and fourth Saturdays of every month. Of course, that's postponed right now while we're on lockdown. But hopefully we can pick that up again as soon as possible. We'd be sure to let you know. And yeah, we couldn't do it without the help of our volunteers. So there's always a way to come visit. Of course, as you can see behind me, the terrain is really rough, so not everyone can do it. But if you're willing to give it a shot, I think you'll find it very rewarding. We also do tours of the preserve. This is our first virtual tour, so thank you. And we also have been trying to start up this Talk Story event on the third Friday of every month, where we bring in different experts from all different areas, and they can kind of share and talk story, and everyone from the community can learn a little bit more about all of the things that are happening around us. I'm going to continue down this trail here. Might be hard to make out, but we have an awesome group of volunteers, and one volunteer in particular who likes to work on these trails. This is his trail. He makes it nice and smooth. I have to give credit to the Hawaii Community College, because they like to come out and they usually help us rough out the trails, and then our awesome volunteer Albert kind of finishes them off and makes them really nice and smooth. So we're going to continue on down the trail here. I should have mentioned, as we looked at this outplanting site that I was just showing you, the Hi'ialo outplanting site. But I'll try to describe what's going on here as best as I can. What we're standing on here is an A'a lava flow from Mauna Kea. That's the mountain you see in the background over there. 15 to 35,000 years old. So if you could imagine when it came down, when it was molten, it surrounded this area, and this is an older lava flow. So it completely surrounded and kind of cut off this little area. That's called a kipuka. It's a little island of older substrate that's been surrounded by a fresh lava flow. In this case, not so fresh, because so much time has gone through. But there's a lot more soil development down in here. And so much time has been passing by that it's much more suitable for plant life, at least these subset of species, than the surrounding area. So if you were ever to walk down in there, there's a lot more soil. You'll notice that it's much more suitable for hosting the Ilima, Uhaloa, these smaller shrubs. So it's been quite the successful planting area. Look at this plant over here. This was just planted this year, this winter. And this is called Ojai. It says Bania tomentosa. And this is more of a coastal species. This is also an endangered plant. Oh, look at this. Hopefully you guys can see this. There's been a number of Koa Butterflies flying around the preserve, and it's actually the first year that I've ever seen them, although there has been some observances before. It flew away, so sorry. But it's so awesome. We're starting to see through our efforts, you know, all different insects come back to this area that weren't known to be here previously. And so that's what I take as a sure sign of our successes. Once the other creatures come and utilize this area, it's just so incredible. Back to Ojai. Look at these leaves. If you could smell this, it's absolutely incredible. It smells like peaches, and the scent is coming from these new leaf buds that are just starting to appear. It's the most incredible smell, and although this is less than a year old, planted in November of 2019, it's already spreading apart to be almost 3 feet at its full spread. It stays low, and you notice its silvery sheen to it. Look at this. All of these tiny hairs make it have this silvery appearance. And those hairs are actually to protect this plant from drying out and being damaged by the sun. So the hairs kind of protect it from damaging sunlight, because it's so hot out here typically. But again, this one is an endangered plant, typically found on the coasts in its natural range. This would have been its upper elevation limit if it even existed here in the first place. But because we have this protected area free from the grazing animals and where we can keep a close eye on things, we try to plant anything that might be suitable for this area, and especially with endangered plant species, because they can only live in these kind of protected habitats while there's grazing animals kind of feeding on them. But it does have quite large natural range. These are found down at the southern part of our island now, and across the state there's quite a few ojai out there. Oh, someone noticed that the leaves kind of fold up a lot of times. Right now they're actually pretty open. It's kind of depending on a few different things, how old they are, but they'll also close up when it's really hot. So just like the hairs that it has, it'll close up to reduce the surface area that's been hit by the sun so that it's not getting as much sunlight. So again, this area is where we're planting this year, and over 90% survivorship in this area. It's absolutely incredible. We'll see what makes it through the full year, but I have high hopes. I'm going to continue down the trail now. And like I said, we plant and we have roughly a 75% survivorship on average. You might notice behind me there's some irrigation lines out here, and because this area used to have so many more tall trees, the conditions aren't quite the same as when plants lived here previously, so they're a lot more exposed. So they need a little bit of supplemental water, or at least we give them some supplemental water in the beginning to help get them established. It's quite the endeavor to try to run an irrigation line out here, but we'll water the plants with about 1 to 3 gallons of water per plant each week for the first 6 months to a year. So it's actually really a minimal amount of water that each plant receives, but we're able to get them established. Then we cut off the water after 1 year, and they're just happy to survive on the very little rainfall that we get out here, which is typically 9 to 12 inches of rain every year. Since January 1st, we've had about 6 inches of rain out here, so it's been quite a wonderful year as far as rainfall goes out here, and that's one of the reasons why our planting has been so successful. But let me show you this plant down here. This is our native poppy, Puakala. I'm gonna get nice and close in here. Look at these beautiful white flowers, these white petals. You can see all the, oh, there's a little pollinator. Hi, happy little guy. You can see all of the yellow parts. Those are the male parts of the flower, pollen on the end. And right in the middle there is the pistil, and that purple part, I believe, is the stigma. That's where the pollen is deposited, and it travels down and then pollinates the flower, and underneath it'll start to swell and create the fruit where the seeds will be contained. How's this little guy just having a good time in there? At first glance, I thought it might be a solitary bee, but it's quite fuzzy. I think this one might be one of the non-natives, but I'm not too good. Oh, okay. Oh, Carl, man, he's the expert, so you got to ask him. It has some pubescence on the body. I don't know if you call it. It's the little guy is fuzzy. I think it is a wasp. So again, incredible. If it is the native Hylaeus, we do see him out here from time to time, but all of these little insects are coming back to this zone, and that's what you want to see, man. These plants reproducing on their own, making little seedlings, filling in the area, which we're already seeing after only a handful of years. and just starting to create a self-sustaining forest so that we don't have to do much management out here. That's what we're going for. I've seen the seeds in different nurseries before, but they might be hard to come by. It's a pretty, well, I shouldn't say common, but you can find it on the roadside a lot of times, and you can start to see the brown capsules kind of sticking up. You can try to get some. They're actually somewhat hard to grow in a pot, but we find that they like disturbed areas, so we scatter the seeds around, and although they're hard to keep alive in the nursery, they do well if you throw them out on the rocks, and they'll just pop up wherever they can. Continuing down the trail, we're right at the transition zone, and you won't even be able to tell that we're transitioning. This is Hi'ialo outplanting site, first cleared and planted in 2013. And then this is the first site that I've been a part of. This is Lokahi. And it's in this same kipuka. There's a whole bunch of a'ali'i down in here. And this was the first area that I was a part of planting out here. So it's where I got to meet a lot of you folks. And you can see a koaliava down in there. Yeah, we do protect the forest from sheep and goats only by having this expensive fence that surrounds the entire 275 acres. So we have about 50 acres that have been cleared and planted so far, and there's another 225 that are still out there, although that number is right around 200. We actually have a seed scatter area where there was a big fire. Throw up a thumbs up if you'd like to have another one of these virtual tours in the seed scatter area. We can kind of show what's been going on. That's what's kind of fun about these virtual tours, is that I can take you to places where we can't normally hike to. But I'm going to try to get us down, because this area, Lokahi, is the first area that we tried to plant sandalwood back in this area. And so we got some seeds from as close to here as possible, and we grew those in the nursery. And about 3.5 years ago, we started to bring sandalwood or iliahi back to this area. And it would have been here historically, although you don't see them very much in the lowlands anymore. It's one of Hawaii's first exports, and many people know it was harvested quite a bit, and of course all of the other impacting factors like the animals and the wildfire have made the iliahi less and less over time. But I'm going to walk down this hill, see some koaliavas right there. Look how beautiful those flowers are. Morning glory! Okay, here we go. We have a few iliahi down here. I'm sorry if the reception gets bad. I'm taking a chance by going down in this depression here. The weeds in here, Mr. Rob. What are you doing? Gotta get on this. Okay, here we go. All right. This is a sandalwood that's only about 3.5 years old. I would say it's about 6 feet tall at its tallest branch. And look, check this out. It's already fruiting. So we were able to collect a few hundred iliahi seeds off of the small population of individuals that survived after planting. And you start to see some flowers up top. Hopefully those get pollinated, we'll get even more fruit. But it has this large purple fruit on here. Looks almost like a berry. There's a single seed inside. That's called a drupe. So technically not a berry. Technical term would be a drupe. Impressive for sure. I love this. Look at this. Look at these flowers. You can see them start to open up. And man, I wish you guys were here in person, because these things smell so good. I can smell it just standing here. And so we had a pretty significant seed set off these guys. There's probably about 24 individuals. Yes, Santalum ellipticum here. That's the coastal sandalwood. I'm gonna come back down and see what's going on under here, because there were so many seeds down here. Oh yeah, check this out. Let me crawl around. Look at these guys. These are the seeds down here coming down to the soil, and hopefully we'll start to see more and more sandalwood in this area. Of course, we're going to be collecting seeds and planting them, growing them in our nursery and planting them in different areas. But this area has been super successful for these plants, and hopefully the rodents don't get these seeds, but they haven't found them yet, so that's a good sign. And we're going to tuck some of these under here. I'm just going to move some and put them in the soil. This is so exciting. Look at me crawling around. Of course, we have tiny Ilima starting to pop up in here. Will be young Uhaloa. You can see that fuzzy leaf again, trying to protect it from the sun. This is a common roadside, a lot of people think it's a weed, but this is a very vigorous native plant, Uhaloa. Also in the Malvaceae family, or the hibiscus family. And it was used historically to treat sore throats. You make a tea out of it. And yeah, these seeds will work their way down into the soil. And you know, in the wild, I'm not sure what the actual trigger is for the seeds to start to sprout, but it's somewhat of a rare occurrence. Although I'm sure it happens in its own time. It knows what's going on. I don't know what's going on. But when we put the seeds in the soil in the nursery, if we don't treat them with anything, it can be anywhere from 6 months to 2 years before we actually see any leaf material or those first cotyledons start to pop up. Hey, check this out. Okay, we have the Ilyahi here, and we see the fruit. Look, one last thing before we move on. The leaves are opposite, so the way they attach to the stem, that's often an indicator of what type of plant species it is. And they can have alternate leaves or opposite. And you see how the leaves are attaching at the stem at the same place in pairs. That's called an opposite leaf arrangement. And the leaves have these curved shape to them. One of my old coworkers said they look like a canoe. All right. Let's move on. Come look at this. This, you know, I hope you guys are excited about this as I am. This is a native grass out here, and we rediscovered this as we came through and weed whacked. Can you imagine this whole area with fountain grass? And we found this grass, and we're like, oh, let's not weed whack that one. Of course, it wasn't this big, but look at all these seed heads on it. This is a native Aragras. We see them around different parts of Waikaloa in various sizes of patches. But there's probably about 6 or 7 of these bunches in here. Look how incredible that is. Native grass. Exciting. Of course, we have more a'ali'i here. Look how big that is. Alright. Bye, Aragrasis. Alright. Let's move on. Got this Kiave out here. We leave the Kiave in place just as kind of a temporary placeholder. It's a non-native tree. It's a type of mesquite tree. And this one is from, I believe it's the northern part of South America going into Central America there. But this is a non-native species that's kind of overtaking some of our native forests and all over the place. You might notice it down at the beach where it stabs your feet because it has these big thorns on it. But we leave them in place right now because they're one of the only trees around. And when they do flower, they bring in some pollinators. And so we leave them in place. As our trees, our Wheelie and Uhi and Sandalwood that we saw back there, begin to grow, we'll start to thin them out. And we've actually begun doing that in a few different places. So we're here in the Lokahi planting area, just walking around. You can see this behind me. This is a complete, fully covered area with Uhaloa, a native plant. It's completely taking over the landscape here, which is great, because before it was nothing but fountain grass. See some ali'i out there. There's a few plantings that are hidden out. They're relatively small, our trees that we planted in here. It's only been 3 years. So we do have some Willy uhi uhi and the like, kind of all around. Here we're coming up on one of our older Willy trees here. Excuse me, Ali. Okay, let me turn you around here. Look at this awesome tree. We don't know exactly how old these Willy trees are. These older ones. We've never had them tested or aged or anything. They do become hollow inside over time, but they would have had to have been a substantial size by the time those grazing animals first arrived in Hawaii. So our best guess is that these things are 200 to 300 years old, possibly older. This one is a lot smaller than the other ones, the other older ones. So I don't know if that means it's younger or if it just wasn't able to reach the same size. But again, I think this thing is at least a century old. Take a look at these leaves again. They have these trifoliate leaves here. This little part right here, that's not a full leaf. It's called a leaflet. But this group of 3 right here, that is the full leaf. And again, Willy is part of the bean family. So once it flowers, it has these bright orange flowers. And I think we'll be able to see some of those at our next stop. But once those flowers are pollinated, it grows these almost edamame-like bean pods with these bright red seeds inside. We'll try to find some on our way, but those bright red seeds have a very hard outer seed coat, and were traditionally strung into these beautiful, beautiful lei. The overcast light is not helping us, but you see this orange bark in here? Let me see if I can get up close. We have this orange and sometimes green streaked bark of the Willy tree. And when the tree goes into its leafless stage during the summer, it does actually photosynthesize through some of these green pigments in the bark. And then this orange pigment, because we're so hot, so exposed here in Waikoloa, it's actually too much light. So it creates these orange pigments to kind of reflect and protect itself from damaging UV radiation, almost like a sunscreen in a way, or like a tan. But it just leaves these trees with the most beautiful colorations. As you go up, see some more leaves in here. And let's continue on. Let's go try to find a flower. Oh yeah, here you go. Here you can see how they become hollow inside. So this is just the base of the trunk here, coming right out of the rocks. Impressive little guy. But as time goes on, the insides begin to kind of decay and rot out. So the insides are hollow, and the living part kind of surrounds that hollow space. And that living tissue is what transports all of the nutrients throughout the tree. That orange color, look at that bark. It's incredible. Okay, I'm going to take you over to what might be my favorite tree in the preserve. Let's go take a look here. Excuse me, Ali. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So glad we get to kind of come off trail and I can show you some of these things that are going on out here that we typically wouldn't be able to see on a normal tour. Of course, I can't have 20 to 30 people crawling around under the bushes with me looking at sandalwood. Okay, here is a Willy tree. It has all of this white powdery mildew on it. This is another natural occurrence that happens here in the preserve. When things get really wet, as they have been, I mentioned those 6 inches of rain in the past few months, this powdery mold gets on the leaves. And again, because Willy drops its leaves for part of the year, oftentimes its reaction is just to drop these leaves and start to produce new leaves that won't have this powdery mildew on it. And it's hard to focus that in, but although, you know, it is affecting the plant somewhat, it's usually not too deleterious or harmful to these Willy trees. They grow just fine. And here we go. I don't get to show this tree very often on tours, but I have taken a picture with it several times. And it just has the most awesome architecture. Okay, I hope you guys can see this. It's a little dark, but look at the way it just sweeps in the direction of the wind. The trade winds are usually blowing through here, and here in the Waikoloa Dry Forest Preserve, it's not uncommon to have 20, 30, 40, or even 50 mile an hour winds as a regular occurrence. So these trees have to be really adapted to these high windy environments. And of course, this one is just blowing right along with the wind, and it has this kind of curved main trunk here. And I do see some flowers in there. I hope we can get close enough to a flower where you can actually check it out. Hi'ialo, the tree at the beginning of the day, used to have flowers on it, but looks like all the remaining flowers are really high up on the tree. I wasn't able to show you them. So let's get a closer look on this guy here. Look at that trunk. This tree right here actually has this interesting bark pattern that you don't typically see on a lot of Willy trees around the preserve. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but it has this very, I mean, as far as trees go, it has a pretty normal bark pattern, but this kind of splitting bark you don't really see too often on the trees. And we're not exactly sure what's going on. We think it might be like a callus or maybe some scar tissue. The goats, you saw how sweeping it was. The goats used to just climb right up this tree before we had the fence and munch on these branches. But take a look down here. I mentioned the seeds, and there's actually quite a few seeds just littering the ground down here. Look how bright it is across the rocks. Oh my goodness. And they are just all over the place. This was a good seeding year for this tree in particular. And we'll typically collect all of these. These ones were missed probably because they were too high in the branches for our pickers to collect them. So they just kind of fell down naturally. But ooh, there is a flower up there. Let me see if I can come around the backside. You can start to see some of the petals on the ground here. Nice bright orange flower. And the timing of these flowers, this one's a little high, but I'm gonna try to get up in there. This is the best I can do, so I'm sorry folks. The timing of these flowers is really interesting. They drop their leaves in the summertime, so it becomes very, very dry. And just when it's the driest part of the year, in that late summer going into fall, they're barren skeleton. You have to understand the leaves are gone, so it looks like the tree is almost dead. A lot of people contact us and ask us if their tree is dead, but nope, it just dropped its leaves, and it creates all of these orange blossoms right in the hottest part of the year. So its strategy is to kind of be the only game in town where the pollinators can come get that nectar and feed on these flowers, when typically the forest does not have very many flowers in it at that time. So make sure you come check back in with us in the late summer when we do our flower tours. It's unusual for the trees to be flowering right now. We're still in the kind of end of winter, but we've had a few different weather conditions going on out here over the last number of months. So some of the trees have a few flowers on them, which is typically out of cycle for this area. And we're starting to reach the end of our tour, but there's a couple things I wanted to show you. Look at these. This is a native vine. Not the koalialva. This is called a viki. It's known for being a super fast growing vine, also in the bean family. And look at these beans here. They're huge. It's like the size of my hand. And of course we have kolomona. These flowers smell great. And I'll just take us to one last little spot here before we end our tour. I wanted to show you one of our elder uhi trees, because you don't really get to get up and close and personal with them very often. There's only 50 or less of these large trees in the world, and we're caring for 8 of those. And so we're doing everything we can to collect as many seeds as we can, growing them in the nursery. They grow surprisingly well, very easy to grow from seed. And then we plant them out in these planting areas with people like you. All right, here we go. Whoa. And here we go. I should have stopped. Okay, look at this tree. Oh, let me get a better angle where we can actually see some of the colors in here. This is one of our large uhi trees. And this one is quite healthy. You always see this pile of dead limbs here, kind of piling up down here. This is one of the most dense and hard woods native to Hawaii. And before metal came, a lot of the tools and weaponry would have been made from this plant here, uhi. This is a natural seedling down here. Hi, little buddy. Let me come closer. Look at the flowers one last time. Oh, this one's got a bunch of seed pods on it. Look at all these seed pods. As the seeds mature inside, they'll start to get larger and larger, and then when they're ready to be collected, makes this rattle sound. So here's an older one, and that's how you know the seeds are ready. They're loose inside that pod and ready to come out. This one suffered some wind damage earlier in the year. That's these dead leaves that you're seeing, but otherwise the tree is still quite healthy, and of course beautiful flowers and a nice healthy seed pod. So thank you all for joining me on the tour today. I hope you liked it. If you have any other ideas of where some parts of the preserve that you might want to see are, you can comment, tell us where to go next. I'd like to do a tour of the seed scatter area, but we can also see some of the younger planting areas, kind of look at the different strategies that we have going on out there. Or we could just walk around the nursery, maybe a shorter tour, and just kind of see everything that's going on in there. But again, thank you everybody. Thank you for joining us on our first virtual tour of the Waikoloa Dry Forest Preserve. We hope to do this again for you in the very near future. And we're sorry that we can't get everybody out here for a real in-person tour. But as soon as we can, we're going to be able to get people back out in the forest and enjoying this place, because that's what we're all about, is having the community be a part of this place. So thank you, love you, forest loves you, don't forget to wash your hands, and hope you have a great day. Bye!